Hello and welcome to the Avid Technology Podcast with me, Ryan Morn. Now today's podcast we've got something a little bit different for you. We had the opportunity to talk to Paul Butler, who is a great chap, longtime friend of Avid, and he's also the CEO of the North East Automotive Alliance. We talked to Paul about electrification and its impact on members of the Alliance and what their big challenges and problems are moving forwards. So a little bit different from our normal podcast. Hopefully you'll find it interesting and useful all the same. So without further ado, here we go, interview with Paul Butler. Okay, so Paul, could you tell me a bit about yourself, your background?
So, my background isn't in automotive. I spent 10 years within one of Europe's most successful clusters, NEAA, North East Process Industry Cluster. During my time with NEAA, I became a cluster expert for NEAA, and then also sat on the Cluster Excellence Expert Group within Europe. You had to be a gold label cluster to be part of that. And then as a result of that became a benchmarking expert for Europe as well. So I'm still the only benchmarking expert for cluster management excellence here based in the UK.
What's a cluster?
Clusters really first introduced by Michael Porter, Harvard academic, and they're basically groups of interrelated businesses that are driving wealth creation within a region.
Oh, right.
So an easy analogy really is a trade association, but focusing specifically on a region.
Okay, right. So NEPIC was a cluster, but what does NEPIC stand for?
North East Process Industry Cluster. So it's
Right.
covering the chemical, pharmaceutical, biotech industry. As a result of a project I was leading for NEPIC at the time, I started working with the automotive industry to look at setting the cluster up.
Right.
Once the interest was gleaned from key industrialists, we then started working with them to make sure they set it up against European best practice. And at that point, the board recognised they'd got all the automotive experience they needed around the table, but needed somebody who understood clusters. So I was asked if I wanted to apply for the position, and here I am today, nearly 4 years in, sitting, and we're now the largest automotive cluster in the UK, and probably seen as the exemplar cluster in the UK as well.
Wow, so the North East Automotive Alliance is the largest automotive cluster in the UK.
It is, and actually we achieved that within 11 months of launch.
Oh, wow.
Such was the appetite for an organisation like this.
So what tell us what is it that the North East, should we abbreviate it to the NEAA? Is that okay? The NEAA,
Yeah.
Tell us what the NEAA does, what's it all about?
So we looked to try and improve regional competitiveness, so we were really set up to be industry-led, to drive that regional competitiveness and to work together to identify common challenges, common issues and opportunities for growth for the region. So when we launched, we sat down and worked with the key industrialists to identify the key thematic areas we'd focus on.
Right.
That's network and connectivity, understanding the true size of the automotive industry, understanding the regional capability, business excellence, so that's about identifying and sharing best practice.
Yeah.
Innovation technology, so how can we support companies to innovate more, both in terms of manufacturing innovation, but also then in terms of the vehicle technology element and how we can really strengthen that within the region.
Right.
Skills, another key area for us, and has been the number one hot topic ever since we launched, and trade and investment as well.
Right.
So within those groups, 5 thematic areas, we currently have 13 working groups with about 160 industrialists committing their time to work through these groups on these common issues or these common challenges. And that's really the power of the cluster. It's us being able to pull the industry together to focus on these activities and really look at addressing those and capitalising and maximising opportunities that we have.
So when you say industrialists, that will be other people like me, I guess. So people who are running automotive businesses of all different shapes and sizes. So what is a typical member company?
It varies from your major OEMs such as Nissan and Komatsu through key tier ones all the way down into SMEs like yourself who are growing rapidly. they tend to be the companies who are more proactive and sit on the various working groups.
Yeah.
And then we have a lot of member companies that are from the service sector. So
Right.
these are organisations who are already working with the industry but are supporting as
Okay.
opposed to manufacturing products.
So even the big OEMs like Nissan and Komatsu would sort of be their members, and they then effectively end up working together to help each other be
They
more
do.
competitive.
In actually one of the first best practice transfers we had was Nissan and Komatsu. So
Yeah.
Komatsu have got fantastic health and safety record and also procedures, and they did a best practice transfer into Nissan.
Oh, wow. And that, I mean, people are often surprised. In fact, I've been travelling overseas the last few days, and we always end up explaining the North East. You're like, oh, isn't it hard to recruit people up there, or is there anything other than trees? And but the automotive industry in the North East is massive, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We did some analysis when we first launched the cluster. We've identified just over 230 companies that are in the direct supply chain. So these are companies making product that finishing in the final vehicles. Those companies are turning over just over 11 billion and employing about 30,000 people directly. So it's huge. Okay, Nissan are at the forefront of all of that, and certainly when they came into the region in 1986, they've been the catalyst for the growth and expansion of the sector. But we do have some real strength within the region as well, and we've got tier ones who are based in the region who are not even supplying UK automotive. It's 100% export.
Right, and there's a few. So the bigger OEMs, Nissan, Komatsu, Caterpillar, the big Cummins engine plant as well down in Darlington. So there's a huge amount of automotive activity of all different levels, isn't there? I don't know, I heard once someone tell me that there's more cars made in the northeast of England than there are in the whole of Italy. Is that still the right number?
Unfortunately, it's not true now.
Right.
Italy's increased production. But yeah, I mean, Nissan themselves are responsible for about 30% of all UK volume. It's by far and away the largest plant in the UK, producing approximately 500,000 vehicles. We should see some significant growth over the next few years as well, as the new models for Duke, Qashqai and X-Trail come forward. So on the back of that, new investment into the North East. So we have kind of been protected a little bit from the impacts of Brexit, where the UK as a whole has seen a decline in investment, but because of the new model allocation, companies are winning business and they've got to invest to look at meeting those future challenges.
And of course, one of those big things is electrification, and it's come up a lot in the last couple of months because there's been a press around new battery plants in Europe. I mean, so not even just the UK, people talking about the first gigafactory in Europe. You're like, no. And a lot of people don't realise there's a massive battery plant attached to the Nissan factory in Sunderland, right?
There is, yeah.
And that was built a long time ago, wasn't
it? It was. I can't remember the date, but it's something like a £500 million investment by Nissan to build a battery facility. On the back of that, it's going through sale at the moment. So Nissan are divesting from that, but it's a strategic reason as to why. Looking at the future growth in electrification, the battery plant will need investment to look at ramping up production to meet those future growth targets.
Because they make all the cells in the Sunderland plant that are used in the European Leafs and the van. The van
as well, yeah.
So they actually export batteries from Sunderland that go to Spain to go into the vans.
They do.
Yeah.
I believe they're also bringing in cells and batteries from America to meet the European demand, such has been the success of the new Leaf.
Right, and of course that's the Leaf as well is built at the Sunderland plant.
It is, yeah, most successful electric car in Europe. I think last year we made about 20% of all Europe's electric vehicles were produced at Nissan Sunderland. Wow. And I suspect, due to the success of the new Leaf, that it'll be a much greater proportion.
I've got to admit, I didn't really like the first Leaf. I liked it in a lot of ways, but I didn't like it in other ways. But the new one is just a stunning car. I mean, you can't fault it.
It is a fantastic car, and I've had the pleasure of driving it as well. So I had it on loan for about a week. It's a superb car, full of latest technology and gadgets.
Yeah.
But it was a real pleasure to drive as well. Took it down the A1. It's got first stage of driverless technology.
Yeah.
So you can put it in adaptive cruise control, set it off, and it'll follow the lane markings.
Right.
You just have to grab the steering wheel every 15 seconds, otherwise it'll come to a controlled stop.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And the only real problem, of course, with Leafs at the moment is the waiting list's massive.
It is.
Because it's been such a sort of runaway success. Yeah. I've been looking at getting one recently, and I think it's a 9-month wait I was quoted.
Right,
so
9 months now.
Yeah.
It's going up. Yeah, it's been a phenomenal success, and I believe they're looking at production volumes and seeing whether they can be increased. And it has the potential of being the second highest volume product in Nissan Sunderland, which is remarkable for an electric vehicle.
Yeah, but it must be, though, helping them, because of course they make a lot of diesel product at Sunderland and diesel engines, and that's, right now diesel's kind of not doing so well, so the fact they've got the electric there must be a big asset, a big bonus for that plant.
It is. I mean, when you look at the product they're making there, Qashqai, most successful car in UK automotive history, designed, developed and manufactured here in the UK. We're fortunate the Sunderland plant actually makes petrol engines. All the diesel engines are from Renault.
Right.
So when you look at hybridisation and full electrification, then actually we've got an opportunity to grow the asset base here in the North East and capitalise on that hybridisation, the petrol engines, etc.
Yeah. Do you see, so obviously beyond Nissan, in the other members of the NEAA, I mean obviously we're Avid's a member and we are electrification mad, but how are the other members? What are they are they planning to change businesses, or what's going on there in terms of...
They are, and I think if it depends where they sit in the supply chain. Obviously, if you're a major tier 1 supplier supplying into the likes of Nissan or some of the off-highway companies, a lot of the technology development is done at head office.
Yeah.
So the plants themselves might be 2 or 3 years behind where the technology are. They're making the product for the current vehicle lineup.
Yeah.
But when you look further down the supply chain, and we've done some analysis recently about the vehicle technology capability in the North East, and we have some real strengths around power electronics, electric motors. Obviously, we've got the battery facility, the only battery facility currently producing in Europe.
Yeah.
We do have some fantastic strengths that we can really look to capitalise on, and I certainly think the acceleration towards electrification and our existing capability stands the region in real good stead to look at growing and expanding.
Yeah.
Truly becoming an automotive powerhouse.
Yeah. Oh, I hope so. We've been working for long enough in that space. It's sort of, in some ways, it seems a little bit surreal what's happened in the last year with electrification, because it's, even just 2 or 3 years ago, it was a completely different story. I remember being out there trying to convince people to do something as simple as just fitting an electric fan to a bus. And 4 years ago that was a really difficult sell, whereas now OEMs from around the world are knocking on the door to electrify the whole powertrain. It's really transformed. There seems to be a very strong pull. And is there any, I don't know, you probably can't tell us any secrets that you might know, but there's presumably going to be lots of other electric or hybrid vehicles produced in the North East in the not too distant future?
Yes, I would imagine we'll see new announcements fairly soon on product. But talking to some of the key industrialists within the entire UK automotive industry, it was said probably back end of last year that an individual believed that every single OEM in the UK would be fully electrified by 2021.
Wow.
Which is remarkable. But certainly if you look at the diesel sales, you can see it's market driven.
Yeah.
Consumers aren't looking to buy diesel vehicles at the moment, which is a shame, because certainly if you look at the latest diesel engines, they are very, very efficient and clean, but clearly the market's going away from that, and electrification is the way forward.
Yeah, it's I've sort of mixed. I mean, I've been an automotive guy my whole life, and I can virtually tell you nut and bolt how to take apart and reassemble some engines. I remember lapping valves. It was literally a fun thing to do on a Saturday as a child. But the shift is quite marked, and the public awareness of climate change now, I think, is a big thing, and obviously air quality really, and how we tackle those things, and with electrification, you sort of shift some of it, but it's still obviously got big challenges in terms of the costs of the vehicles and the cost of the batteries and all the sort of elements that go into that. So it's in some ways, electric vehicles should be really simple, but they're actually probably more complicated, certainly more costly at the moment than a conventional car. So the industry's got a lot of challenges ahead, trying to adapt to all of that. Is that the biggest challenge at the moment that people see or talk about to you? Because you must be a shoulder that a lot of guys like to cry on.
And I think just the pace of change within automotive is remarkable. Not just electrification, but new technology around connected and autonomous vehicles.
Right.
So we're expected to see more change in the next 10 years than we have in its entire history. So if you think of a Tesla today compared to the very first car manufactured, and think of the technology advancements there, yet within the next 10 years we're going to see more change than that. It's quite impressive, and it certainly is very, very exciting time to be involved in automotive. It will bring with it significant challenges, but it'll also bring with it some significant opportunities. We're heavily involved in working with the wider UK automotive industry to look at how we can capitalise on that. We want to make sure that the technologies of tomorrow are designed, developed and manufactured here in the UK. So we'll work very closely with the Auto Council Supply Chain Group, looking at those future technology trends, and looking at the capability that we've currently got in the UK, looking for gaps and looking at how we can attract new companies into the region, into the automotive sector. What
kind of sort of levers do you have? What things are people doing to make sure that the new technology is being developed here, or companies are being attracted?
There's a number of key things. So if you look at the automotive sector deal linked to the industrial strategy, that's clearly setting out the strategy for the UK to look at battery technology, to look at electrification, and to look at connected autonomous vehicles. So it's right at the forefront of that, and they really want to make sure that R&D element is anchored here, so future manufacturing will take place in the UK.
Right. And do you see that happening? Is there more R&D activity starting to come in?
Yes, I believe so, and certainly just from looking from a North East perspective, I think that 2019 is going to be a very exciting year for us. We've already seen announcements around the Centre of Excellence for Sustainable Advanced Manufacturing. That really is about supporting manufacturing innovation, and it will support new product development and process innovation there.
Oh, okay, so that's quite interesting, that facility. That's just explain a little bit. So I know what that is, but I know a lot of people won't know what that is. So what's that idea?
So CSAM, as it's often referred to, really came around as a result of some of the work we're doing within the NEAA around supporting manufacturing innovation. It was widely recognised in the North East that actually the closest centre offering a similar service to that is AMRC in Sheffield. As a result of that, there's little engagement from the North East companies to engage with these catapult centres of excellence to support manufacturing innovation, and therefore the North East companies weren't innovating quite as at the lower levels, but also they had a number of challenges to try and meet. We developed this concept to try and develop a centre of excellence which would connect North East businesses into research excellence across the entire UK. It's been about 2 years in its making. We've now got confirmation the building is starting to be built now on the International Advanced Manufacturing Park. be a fantastic asset for the North East. It's
Yeah.
about 120,000 square foot building, so
Wow.
a significant and impressive building. But it's about supporting manufacturing innovation and helping companies be right at the forefront of those automation and process technologies.
And the sort of challenge that was trying to solve, if I understood correctly, was that in a lot of automotive tier ones and supply chain, the factories are so efficient, they're so lean, they kind of run, not a hair is out of place, not a penny extra is spent anywhere that doesn't have to absolutely be spent. So they are 100% completely, totally, utterly focused on the day job, the job at hand. But then that often doesn't give them the chance to experiment with future technologies. If they want to change a production line and put more automation or robotics in or use some new process, they don't have anywhere to do it because their day-to-day business is so kind of constrained by delivering exactly the right amount of parts at exactly the right time to their end customers.
Exactly. So it ends up they're quite risk averse.
Yeah.
You tend to find, or we've certainly found, that most companies were innovating at TRL levels 8 and 9, technology readiness levels 8 and 9. Two key factors. One, they don't want to try new process or technology that risks stopping the line and therefore stopping production. And two, quite often they're facing quite formidable financial challenges to win investment from the parent company.
Yeah.
So some companies are looking for as little as a year payback.
Wow. So you're with CSAM, you're going to give basically a sandbox that people can experiment in, but then also have like shared common resources and sort of good links with academia and universities and
Exactly,
things like
really
that.
building that innovation capability, looking at identifying common challenges that industry can come together, share knowledge, share resource, share cost, develop a common solution,
Yeah.
deploy a common solution, and then benefit from the ongoing developments of that solution as well.
Right.
So things like AGVs, internal, external AGVs, connected autonomous logistics, things like that are starting to come to the fore. And of course, industrial digitalisation is going to be a major part for this.
So that's AGV being, so everyone obviously gets obsessed about self-driving cars on the road, but then if anyone's ever been to a big factory, you'll see an awful lot of these little tug trucks driving around. There's a guy normally driving it, towing trailers with parts on, and you have to make sure you don't get run over by these things whizzing around all over the place. And actually there's a big push at the moment to use the kind of autonomous technology that's enabling autonomous cars on the road in those sort of on-site vehicles that are operating within a factory campus or an industrial campus. But that's a big invest. That's a huge, developing that sort of technology that's beyond any one company, isn't it?
It is. It is. You tend to find, we within the North East, we've had instances where a recent company who's deployed AGVs has actually benchmarked themselves against a number of tier ones who've already deployed them.
Yeah.
And because of the collaborative nature we've got as a result of the NEAA, they've been happy to share their experience and so on. So actually this tier one has managed to develop an AGV which is about 4 or 5 times cheaper than what you can buy commercially.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal saving for them.
Yeah.
It's just they've had to manufacture it inside to meet that themselves to be able to meet the payback periods.
And people are talking about using it to do short deliveries as well, aren't they? Sort of from factories to factories.
They are. So there's one organisation here in the North East who've done outdoor AGVs. So that's larger scale trucks moving product between factories.
Yeah.
The next phase of that, and something we've started to look at, is connected autonomous vehicle logistics, particularly looking at the last mile logistics.
Right.
And we've got quite a unique test infrastructure here in the North East.
Yeah.
If you look at Nissan, it's the biggest plant in the UK. It's going to grow over the next couple of years. We've got a high concentration of key suppliers that are either located on the perimeter fence or certainly within 4 or 5 miles of the plant.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 suppliers that are currently supplying on a private road.
Yeah.
So it's off highway, ideal for trials for cab logistics. You can then scale it up to to companies who are on the perimeter fence where there's a little interaction with a public road. You've got IAMP, which could be designed for cab logistics as well. So you've got an opportunity to retrofit an existing infrastructure or design for purpose.
Yeah.
So it is quite a unique testbed, and we've had Meridian up recently. They've seen the potential, so we're now in talks of how we might be able to develop this as a potentially a UK testbed,
right,
in that last mile logistics.
Because obviously at the moment this stuff's all really hard to do because it's new and it's really expensive, so it's only like mass scale where there's an advantage, but as it gets cheaper and cheaper to do, it's going to become more and more practical for even quite small companies to implement this sort of thing.
Yep. Without a doubt. Key to this is working with the right organisation. So if you think of the industrial strategy, the battery Faraday, connected autonomous vehicles is Meridian and CCAV, so working with those. And then if we're looking at electrification, then the Stevenson Challenge, or as it's been rebranded to, is driving the electric revolution.
Right.
These organisations will really push those technologies forward.
Yeah.
There'll be investment from the government in supporting the development of those technologies, with the idea that we can really be at the forefront, but then anchor the manufacturing here in the UK.
Yeah. Those. So for people not in the UK, not in automotive, those sort of different programs that Paul just mentioned are UK government. So the UK government's got this grand industrial strategy, and they said we want to do this at a high level, and then we're going to do it through doing these sort of smaller programs. But even the smaller programs, they've put hundreds of millions of pounds of funding towards research and investment in those core areas that form part of the industrial strategy. And vehicle electrification is one big leg of that. And another big leg is the connected and autonomous vehicles. So there's some huge programs to try and stimulate investment that are actually supported by the government. It's quite an unusual, because for many, many years we didn't have very much of that sort of thing in the UK at all. And then sort of a few years ago, it's like someone went, aha, we can do all this stuff, and all these sort of grand schemes came out. And a big part of what you do is help companies navigate that, because there's so much of it around.
It is, yeah, and certainly we play a key role in trying to connect the pieces together.
Yeah.
If you take cab logistics, for instance, and you think of electrification, there's a strong synergy between electrified propulsion for last mile cab logistics.
Yeah.
So the idea of being able to bring two projects together to work on that, if you're thinking of industrial digitalisation, there's a lot of activity taking place regionally and nationally. So how can you bring those programs together to make it much easier for businesses to access the right type of support? And that's a key role of the cluster. We sit on a number of groups regionally and nationally, and really try to be that conduit through which businesses can get the right type of support, and also to make sure there's efficiency in the system where there might be national activities and regional activities that are duplicated. Well, we can pull them the two together to make sure it's much better for industry.
And I've got to say, Avid's been a member of the NEAA for a while, so obviously I'm slightly biased. But we have accessed some of the knowledge transfer and gone. It sounds really fancy, but it's as simple as running a workshop at a company that has best practice in a particular area. Lots of other companies go to the workshop. Everyone gets together, talks about their issues in health and safety or connected autonomous vehicles or whatever a particular thing has to be, and shares ideas, drinks some coffee, eats a sandwich, and then goes back to the day job. But it's quite a simple thing, but actually your ability to bring people together who wouldn't normally be in the same room. For us, it's been amazing because we've had access to, and as a business we're scaling up, but it allows us to see inside companies who've already scaled and get access to sort of what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what the sort of pitfalls were, and really has helped us massively in our sort of scaling so far. And as we're continuing to grow as a business, we're always talking about what we learned when we went to visit Company X. Almost every day that comes up in conversation as we're talking about plans for growing the business. So it's been a really, really useful tool for us. And I don't know how without because that's partly down to your team and how they facilitated that. I'm not sure if it's something that you could easily do anywhere else. I don't know.
To be honest, it's following cluster management excellence.
Right.
So when we structured the NEAA, it was very much following the principles of cluster management excellence. So we set the right framework up, and it's much easier to succeed. We've also brought in the right talent as well. So if you look across the NEA team, we've got a very, very diverse but relevant set of skills.
Yeah.
So we're able to draw on each other's experience and expertise. Two of my guys have probably got 50 to 60 years of experience in the automotive sector in the North East of England. Very, very well connected. But we're also finding companies who've been operating in this sector for a number of years that they weren't aware of. So there really is a lot of capability in the North East. And part of our role is to understand that capability and then connect the companies as and when there's a business requirement. Lots of examples of that, lots of examples of knowledge transfer, of sharing best practice. Not only best practice, but also not what to do as well, avoiding some of those costly mistakes.
Yeah, well, you could do, if we had a few what not to do workshops, we could keep you guys busy for a week here. Do you think, I was wondering about this when I was thinking about preparing for today, do you think there's an element, because it always strikes me that at these knowledge sharing workshops you get an amazing amount of openness and honesty from everyone who goes, and I was sort of wondering, do you think is that a northern thing, is that, or do you think actually if they're well run you would get that anywhere?
I think it's a combination. Right. I would say the North East is probably the most successful region for cluster activity. Right. If you look at NEPIC, it's the third highest ranked cluster ever within Europe. Wow. You then look at some of the other clusters, then we benefit from a tight geographical location. So it's quite a tight community. Most people know each other. But also I think Northerners are more open and more friendly, so it does support that. We were very conscious right at the outset, so part of the work we needed to do when we were bringing the groups together was really develop that collaborative mentality, help overcome some of those initial barriers or concerns about potentially sharing best practice. The key thing is it's about sharing sharing ideas and information, but not trade secrets. So when you look at a lot of the best practice transfer we've done, it's really commercially sensitive information. Yeah, that must be a difficult balance to maintain for people, showing people around your plant and trying to sort of not give any trade secrets away, but being. I mean, my guys love those events, so there's a very there's always a good spirit. Well, I think particularly at a tier 1 level, when you look at the structure of an organisation, actually their biggest competition is their internal sister plants. So if a company wins the business, then it's up to them where they allocate that business or where that product's going to be made and then supplied into the OEM. Right. If you can upskill the North East capability and really look at improving competitiveness, then the North East plants are going to receive more and more investment into those plants, and that's a key target for us, is to make sure the North East plants remain highly competitive within their own organisational structure. Yeah. There is a practice of global best practice sharing across the multinationals within their own organisations. What we do is bring that global best practice to the fore in the North East. So they share internally, we bring it into the North East, and all companies benefit. That's an interesting point, actually, that sometimes what two companies that might seem competitors to each other on their North East plants aren't actually really at all, that really the main competitor to that plant is the sister plant within the same business, trying to pick up that manufacturing. That's I hadn't really thought of that before. It's a big deal. They obviously. So what's the what's kind of keeping members awake at night at the moment? What are the sort of big challenges that people have, other than the obvious? Yeah, well, the obvious is Brexit, but until we fully understand what the deal is, or no deal, or remain, it's hard to to specify what sort of impact it could have on the sector.
Yeah.
Obviously, companies are doing their own scenario planning, and we leave them to do that in global organisations. I would say the biggest challenge, other than the obvious, is the pace of change within the sector. So how we're diversifying and accelerating towards this new technologies, electrification and connected autonomous vehicles, how that'll impact the supply chain, looking at how we build capability. Skills is obviously another huge challenge for everyone, not just the North East, but across the entire UK.
I get asked about that all the time, actually. I was going to ask you, if you hadn't mentioned it, I was going to ask you about skills, because even this week I've been asked several times about recruiting people in the North East, and is it possible and whatnot. What are the specific issues around skills? Is it getting... There's just not enough people in the region, or there's not enough professional people, or getting people to move here or not move? There's a
number of challenges at operator level. Recruiting the right number of operators is a challenge for certain companies, but then it goes all the way through. If you think a lot of the automotive companies came in on the back of Nissan. So 1986, Nissan came. A number of their tier ones came into the region. As they've grown, the supply chain have grown. So you've got waves of people who were recruited into those organisations. A lot of those waves are coming up to retirement. And they tend to be at a high level now. Right. So it's how we backfill of that. If you think about the new technologies, particularly the areas you're looking at, it's a completely different skill set. It's much more technical and R&D focused. So how do we support the skills? So we're working with a number of partners, and we're completing a study on the future skills requirements of this sector, and looking to put together a workforce development plan which should secure the right skill sets for this sector to take us forward.
Our challenge is often, it's different to someone who's like a big manufacturing plant, although we are becoming a bigger manufacturing plant. And in some ways, because we do have in the North East this asset of these great universities, and we've got, I'm going to get this wrong, 5 universities, 4 kind of really close to where we are now, and then Teesside a little bit further away. But they've got real strength in engineering and sciences, all of them really. So at a graduate level, actually, there's a lot of people come to study in the North East who then want to stay, and you get some fantastic quality graduates. But then the challenge for us is attracting more experienced staff to move to the region. And we have this funny thing, and actually being in the cluster helps us, that people from the UK, even now, sometimes have these sort of preconceived ideas about what the northeast of England is like. And they don't know about the amazing beaches and the countryside and all this sort of thing, and they're a bit scared of moving here. People from outside the UK tend to do a bit more research first, and then they kind of, actually it's pretty nice there. I'll give it a try. But like convincing people to move here for us is one of the main sort of challenges, and I kind of feel like the more R&D companies there are, perversely that creates competition for our staff. But also, in a way, helps to convince people that, even if it didn't work out with that company, there's these other 3 companies that all do sort of similar stuff. And I think we're starting to see on the power electronics and the machines side, there is like a growing cluster of businesses. And it's weird because you end up telling, you're trying to convince someone to come and work for you, but you end up telling them how good all the other local companies are who do the same stuff as well, just as don't worry, there's all these other people here. But it definitely, it's kind of really strange set of challenges on recruitment, and particularly convincing people to move to the North East. And I'm not sure, you moved here, right? You're not.
Yeah, as you can tell from my accent. So originally from Yorkshire, moved up in 2001.
Yeah. So you're sort of a northerner, but not.
Sort of, yeah. I've come back to one side of my family's roots, who were born and bred in the North East. But for me, it's a fantastic region to live. You've got everything on your doorstep. Within an hour, you've pretty much got anything you want to do, from mountains through fantastic coastline. Pretty much anything you want. And a lot of people who do locate, a lot of business leaders I know, I've met over the years, are from outside the region. They've moved here and they don't want to leave themselves. So once people come here, it's great. I do think what you were alluding to around the clustering effect is one of the key benefits of a cluster. So as you start to grow and raise the profile of that of the sector, more people see what's here in the region and are attracted by the opportunities that it provides. So I do foresee, as we grow, particularly we grow the new and emerging technologies side of things, electrification and CAV, then we should see much more attraction into the North East, into North East universities, which ultimately will lead into a higher skilled workforce here. With more availability.
Do you get much involved with the universities? Is that a big part of what you do? Or?
Yeah, obviously with skills being one of the thematic areas we look at. We do have a graduate university group, so we're working very closely with the universities, and I certainly think the workforce development plan we're working on now will have a big impact on universities and the type of courses they want to provide to make sure we've got the right skill sets for industry.
Because there's been a bit of a resurgence in science and engineering at university being not the right words, or being studied. Like the uptake of the courses all seem to be growing, and kids at school now are more aware. I don't know if it's like the Steve Jobs effect or I don't know, but science is kind of like science and engineering is seen as being cool and interesting now. No, banking is kind of like bad and evil, and kids sort of migrating towards doing more interesting things. I don't know if you hear any different, but the courses all seem to be growing quite strongly, and there's more.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is down to raising the profile of STEM subjects. So if you think back, it's now probably 10 years plus that STEM's really come to the fore, but it does take time for that to come through the system. There's a lot of activities around primary school engagement promoting STEM subjects. We support a number of initiatives and encourage our members to support a number of initiatives. So if we can get out into those primary schools, get them enthused by STEM subjects as they come through the system, we're doing more activities with them at secondary level, and then but you'll certainly see by engaging them, it does take time for that to come through. And I think that's probably as a result that the university is seeing greater uptake of STEM subjects as a result of the higher profile for STEM.
Yeah, excellent. And is there anything particularly interesting going on that side? That new university developments or things that are coming through?
There's talk around some activities in that area, but I think from our perspective, we really want to get the workforce development plan finalised before we start engaging with the universities in greater detail to look at how we support the sector going forward. Yeah,
cool. And so just conscious of the time, we've, as predicted, gone over 30 minutes. What's one thing you're most excited about in the next year with the Automotive Alliance?
Just the exciting opportunity we've got for in 2019 around Centre of Excellence for Sustainable Advanced Manufacturing, the driving the electric revolution, CAV logistics, and really looking at how we transform the North East from a region which is famed for its automotive manufacturing to one which becomes a true automotive powerhouse. I always say that a cluster really does impact a region over the medium to long term. We're now coming up to 4 years in March. We're starting to see some of those early shoots of activity around CSAM and etc. So I think longer term, we're really exciting times, and it's a period of unparalleled change as well because of the electrification and CAV and the technologies, and Industry 4 as another one as well.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Well, we're aligned then. Same things that I'm excited about, which is good. Excellent. Well, thanks for your time, Paul. It's been really interesting and insightful. Good luck with the Automotive Alliance this year, and see Sam and all the other exciting things that you're doing.
No problem, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Cheers.
That's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this and found it useful, don't forget we've got loads of podcasts out there already talking about electrification technology in the automotive industry. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Leave us a rating, leave us a comment, hit like. And also, if you've got any particular topics that you would like us to cover, people you'd like us to interview, make a note in the comments below or send us a direct message about that, and we'll try our best to cover those things in the future for you. Thanks very much. We really appreciate your time. Have a good day.